So welcome one and all to the third in our series of circular table talks entitled Out of the Ashes. My name is Nick Nuttall with We Don't Have Time, and I'm your co-host along with Pierre Larssons, who's Director of Sustainability for the pioneering Nordic environmental company Ragn-Sells.
Do you want to act on the climate crisis but don't know how? With our app, you can send climate reviews to organizations and leaders. Our team reaches out to the organization to encourage dialogue. Just download We Don't Have Time. Tap the green Create button and choose Type of Review. Give climate love to people doing great stuff. Create a climate idea to suggest a solution. Or send a climate warning to those who hurt the planet. To increase your impact, you can share the review, because when enough people agree with you, organizations and leaders will change. Many even want your opinion, because we have to work together. Do you want to be part of the solution?
Before we start, I'd like to ask viewers to download our app, leave reviews, and you can also make comments about the show by going to wedon'thavetime.org.
Hi, I'm Ingmar Renzo, and I'm the founder of We Don't Have Time. We are a social network platform and a review platform for the climate. And what you could do on our platform is you could give reviews to leaders, corporate leaders, political leaders, about what they do, good or bad, for the climate. So if you see something that you don't like, you could give them a climate warning, and we will send this climate warning to the leader and have them to answer, have them to change, and put pressure on that issue. But you could also send climate love. If you see something that someone that are doing something great for the climate, and to encourage that and to share that to the world, so more people will look up to that action and do the same. And I think love is actually something that could work very, very well in order to solve the climate crisis. We can't just focus on the problem. We must also focus on the good action, what's actually out there that are working for solutions. And how this works, I could just show you a little bit examples here. Here is a climate love from a company called Houdini that actually have given a climate love to an NGO called Ecocide Law Alliance, because they want business leaders to be involved to make ecocide law so that it will be criminal to destroy nature. And this is something driven by a company on our platform. So this is the upside down. The company are giving love to the non-profit. But we have also a lot of private individuals on our platform, and this is a climate love from our user Muhammad to an organization called Rubicon, because what Rubicon is a company that actually has a solution to the waste problem using artificial intelligence. And that is something that needs to be implemented on scale in many, many cities. So if you log into the We Don't Have Time platform, you could give climate love wherever you see someone doing something great for the climate. And you could be inspired of so many other people around the world acting and working for change. We will never achieve systematic change without individual change. What's most important in order to achieve the systematic change is that if you do the change, you need to communicate it and inspire it to others to act. And that's why I try to do my best to live as climate friendly as possible. So that's why I love my solar panels, for instance. It's not the renewable energy that is the best thing with it. It's actually that everyone sees in my neighborhood that I have those panels, and that is communicating climate action and have them to think about it and have them to do the same. So just 2 months after I put up my solar panels, my neighbor house did the same, and now has many more followed. So my recommendation for your climate action is to do something you're good at, something you like. If you're interested in food, focus on that. If you're interested in buildings, focusing on that, etc., etc. I try to do a lot of things, not just solar panels. For instance, I haven't been traveled by airplane since I found that we don't have time. So I only travel on the ground, by train, etc. I don't eat red meat. I sometimes eat meat, but I'm not an absolute list. And I think that is important, that you don't need to be perfect. No one is perfect, and actually if you are perfect, that will scare people away, because they will feel that they can't take after your actions. So by being imperfect, you will have more followers. And it's impossible to live in a perfect climate-friendly lifestyle in the system we have today, but it's absolutely achievable to do the very best you can and have others to follow, and I totally recommend it. But it's not just climate action on our platform. We are also planting a tree for all new members signing up to our platform. And if you invite your friends, we will soon have a forest together that we will plant for you. Isn't that awesome? So if you want to do some change in the world, just give 5 minutes per day. Log in to We Don't Have Time. You will find the app in the App Store and Google Play and on the web. And do some social media activity that will make an impact. 5 minutes per day. If you do that, and if you talk to your friends to do the same, we will change the world together. Give climate love and save the world.
The series of Circular Table Talks is discussing how a circular economy can critically contribute to a sustainable future for every man, woman and child. And in our first episode, we looked at a tough issue, which was carbon dioxide. Can we use this gas which is causing climate change as a resource rather than a villain for a series of processes and other industrial activities, particularly if we have a price on carbon? And then in our second Circular Table Talks, we actually looked at wastewater. Every drop counts, to see how we could actually harvest materials and substances like, say, nitrogen and phosphorus back into the economy and benefit agriculture, but also the environment and also the jobs. We're now going to our third series, and I'd ask Per Larsens to take over from here.
Yes, today we will look at ashes produced as a result of incineration of municipal and household waste in many countries. Incineration was in the beginning used to only reduce the volumes going to landfill. Nowadays it has become a backbone to generate energy and also detoxify waste flows. But the question is it another step possible? Can we create using new technologies and processes that will allow us, like maybe the fabulous phoenix, the bird that rose out of the ashes, to harvest economically usable materials and give them new life rather than sending them directly to landfills? I'm thinking of potash or potassium chloride, for example. Important substance in agriculture, but also an array of industrial processes where it is needed. Potash today is mined in places like Western Canada and in Belarus. It requires energy to do this, and thus of course generate also climate change emissions, both when it comes to extraction but also in the shipping to countries far away. Mining can also harm the landscapes and the biodiversity. And we have a climate crisis, but we also have a crisis in terms of loss of animal and plant species. What if the many nations would naturally use the occurring potash, instead could replace it by what can be harvested in our ecoloop? Maybe not all, but a good chunk of what is needed might be coming from that way. What we for sure know is that if we create, or when we create circular materials flows, and it was mentioned many times at the COP26 conference, we will for sure not only reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that is emitted to the atmosphere, but also reduce the risk to overshoot any of the 9 planetary boundaries.
Thanks, Per, very much for setting the scene. Before we get going, I'd like to give a global snapshot of municipal and household waste flows worldwide, the likely increases in the future, and why humanity has to get smarter about how we manage these waste flows in order to maximize circular flows of materials back into the economy. I'll also touch on incineration as one option countries are choosing, which links directly to our topic today. The numbers that I'm just going to mention briefly are based on a report by the World Bank called Water Waste 2.0. This shows that today the world is generating just over 2 billion tons of solid waste, and according to the World Bank's report, population and economic growth and urbanization is likely to see that number grow by something like 70% up to 2040, 2050. Currently, the biggest waste generation is in East Asia and the Pacific at around 470 million tons, followed by Europe and Central Asia. They put Europe and Central Asia together at nearly 400 million tons. But the growth over the next 30 years is likely to be overwhelmingly in developing countries. So economically and environmentally sound solutions developed in, say, richer countries could have increasing importance in roles overseas in developing countries. The World Bank report notes that incineration, including waste into energy, is primarily practiced in high-income countries where around 22% of waste is handled in this way. Globally, it's around 11% of waste that is treated by modern incineration systems, although this is changing as China installs more waste-to-energy incineration systems. So what do I and what might we learn from this? I suppose, firstly, that a lot of ash is being produced, and this will continue to grow as less rich economies grow and their need to safely handle rising levels of waste increases, along with the pressures from the middle class, of course, that is emerging in many developing countries who want higher environmental standards. And second, if there are useful materials in the ashes generated, we need to find ways to harvest them. These are resources, and circularity of resources is our best bet for a sustainable future. And thirdly, the World Bank report finds that landfills are contributing to about 5% of the world's current greenhouse gas emissions in the form of methane. And that is likely to double over the next few decades. So does the incineration process that we're talking about here, that brings those ashes, in a sense, back to life, have a further role in dealing with methane emissions? So here I'm going to talk to our next speaker, or turn to our next speaker, and that's Tai Chong, who is spokesperson for the UN Environment's hosted Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Tai, the country's just ended, just recently, the UN Climate Conference, COP26, where something was launched called the Methane Pledge. What is it, and where do landfills fit into this? Over to you, Tai.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so at COP26, countries launched, the US and the European Union, Joe Biden and Ursula von der Leyen, launched the Global Methane Pledge, which now has 110 different countries signed up to it. And that pledge basically says that collectively, the world is going to attempt to reduce methane emissions, human-caused methane emissions, by at least 30% by 2030. And they say at least because 30% is the first target. as technologies, as different ways of being able to reduce methane are discovered, they're going to try to make sure that that number goes up and that we can reduce more methane. And the reason that this is very necessary is that methane emissions are going in exactly the wrong direction. They're rising very, very quickly, and methane is 86 times more powerful than carbon dioxide over the 20 years that it's in the atmosphere. So it's a bit of it's a good opportunity to be able to quickly reduce the rate of warming in the near term, but it's also absolutely necessary if we're going to be able to achieve the Paris Agreement's target of 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Thanks, Ty. And where are these emissions coming from? They're leaking from gas pipelines in places like Russia, for example, other places, but there's also a leakage from the landfills. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what we're looking at here for human-caused methane emissions, the fossil fuel sector is about 35% of emissions. Agriculture, another big sector with 40% of methane emissions. And then the waste sector is 20%. So it's also a considerable contributor to methane emissions. But when we look at CCAC and UN Environment Programme released a report in May this year, and we're looking at where these reductions can be made. By far, the easiest places to get reductions is going to be in the fossil fuel sector. First of all, because we can find the leaks, we can plug them up, and also that the gas that's prevented from leaking can then be sold, so it actually sort of pays for itself. The next best opportunities are in places like the waste sector. I think that we could probably reduce, with current technological means, 29 to 36 megatons of methane emissions a year. But as countries start looking for more and more solutions, they're going to start reaching out to figure out where this can happen. And these methane reductions are not going to be the same. It depends on where you are. So our report found that for Europe and India, the best potential for reducing methane is going to be in waste. So as countries start looking for, trying to live up to this pledge that they've signed up to, they're going to be looking for all sorts of solutions in order to prevent methane from one of these three sources.
Yeah. So there is a possibility, therefore, that if you're using a waste to energy process for handling waste, waste to energy process, that if you're also using the methane there to actually generate, energy, that you might be dealing with two issues. One is dealing with the waste issue, but also at the same time generating more energy that can be put back as a substitute for, say, fossil fuels. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the potential for that to happen, you look at all the different benefits that could come out of that process, waste to energy, preventing methane from entering the atmosphere in the first place is the goal. It's the goal for us. And then being able to turn that into energy or into other products as well would be the ideal situation. We identified for our targeted measures, so at a residential level, source separation and recycling and reuse of waste products, and then no landfilling of organic waste, and then also the recycling treatment with energy recovery, and also no landfill of organic waste for the industrial sector. So yes, waste to energy is definitely one of the solutions that we're looking at.
Great. Ty, thanks very much for being on the show, and that was a very helpful insight into how these processes we're discussing today may have an added benefit. Thanks very much. Now we're going to listen to Bjorn Appelquist, who's from the International Solid Waste Association, who's going to explain a bit about a fresh report they released only last month. So over to Bjorn.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today to present a new publication from ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, that is called The Future of a Waste Management Sector, that outlines what the next 10 years bears in for us. This is a publication you can download from the ISWA homepage at iswa.org. We are all living in a world that is changing rapidly today. We see spiky population growth. We see urbanization as a main trend. We see new consumption and cultural patterns around the world, where consumerism to some extent is replaced by more environmental friendly consumption patterns and more individual development for people. We also see a lot of new technologies, robotics, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence entering our systems. And all of these things are things that the waste management sector and society all have to take into consideration. Because we also live in an area where we see a huge stress on our natural environment. Climate change is evident and real threat to all of us. We also see that our water resources and our biodiversity is under pressure, as well as many other parts of the environment. And we also see that bad waste management throughout the world risks to harm human health as well. And this is where the waste management sector has a great role to play and can make a large contribution, because we can help mitigate climate change, we can bring resources back into the loops, and we can, by making the systems more efficient, more full coverage, and by providing proper treatment options, also provide better conditions for human health and for the livelihood of all the people at our planet. And one of the main contributions that the sector can do is to help bringing materials back into the loops. It could be by recovering industrial materials, technical materials into the manufacturing loops again, and thereby reducing the need for excavating and mining new virgin materials. We can also bring all of the materials from a biological loop back into the systems by anaerobic digestion, by composting, and other technologies, and thereby providing even more feedstock for energy production, for soil improvement, for compost and fertilizer recirculation. So the potential is huge. For some of the technologies, we are having mature solutions ready. For some of the introduction of materials back into the loops, there is a need for more development. There is a need for more cross-sectoral development in order to be able to bring those materials in a good way. And that calls for more research and development to go there. But we also see that despite having technologies and having potential to reach these materials, it is also very important that we improve the markets and for trading recycled materials. This is one of the main things and one of the main issues from going from a linear society to a circular society, is to bring in the drivers, the financial drivers, economic drivers, to help promote and build demand for recovered material utilization in our systems. And this doesn't come by itself. It needs political measures to bring these instruments into play, because it is a huge transition going from linear to circular, and it's not for free, but it has to be done in order to bring the benefits needed to keep our planet safe, sound, and environmental friendly. And one of the most evident potentials for us as a sector is that we can help mitigate climate change. If we look at the direct emissions from the sector, as well as the contribution from bringing recovered materials back into the loops and promoting a circular economy, the waste and resource management sector can help reducing the climate emissions by up as much as 20%. So that's a huge potential contribution there. But as I said, it doesn't come for itself. We need to cooperate with others. We need to develop solutions, and we need to build the governance systems needed to go there. But we are well on our way, and we are happy to continue this trip, and we want to do it together with everybody else out there. So thank you very much for your attention today.
Thanks very much, Bjorn. We're now going to hear from Stefan Harkenson, who's Global Director for City Energy Solutions at E.ON, one of the pioneering energy companies. And we're also going to hear from Lars Linden, who's the CEO of Ragn-Sells Group.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stefan Håkansson, and I'm very delighted to join you all today to talk about circularity and sustainability and what we are doing to truly improve the sustainability transition today. In order for us to be able to achieve our global targets, handling the sustainability change towards a world that we can really live on, we need to embark truly on the journey with circularity. And what is circularity? Circularity for us in E.ON, in the energy utility industry, is about reusing and recycling everything that we can before we start using any primary resources. So every time we have a challenge about a new solution for a customer, we always start by looking at the local place and what is there to offer to first recycle and recover before using new primary energy sources. In order to do this, we need to have the right prerequisites. Right prerequisites with the regulation, legislation, and knowledge with all different stakeholders to be able us to actually find the best solution. And this solution vary from place to place. It all depends on the local prerequisites. And it's extremely important that we have the same view and terminology to enable the best solutions. An example of what we achieved so far. This bag is actually a waste recycling bag. In northern Stockholm, it's the right legislation in place when it comes to demanding of the society to start recycling. While recycling good, we create value in the resource chain and actually look at waste as a resource. It's a resource we can use better and create more value of. And this bag, full with organic waste, one single bag, actually produce fuel for cars. And this bag with organic waste will be actually transformed into biogas, biomethane, and one bag of organic waste lead to take a Volkswagen Passat 2.3 kilometers. Just imagine how many bags you fill every day in northern Stockholm with this kind of waste, and how much petrol and diesel we are avoiding to use when transforming the transport fleet in Sweden. This thinking about using material more than once and seeing the material with the recycling and the circularity force is a necessity for us to be able to drive the development going forward. This waste will go into a fermentation plant. The residual out of that waste will go into either going to the acres as fertilizers or into incineration. In this incineration, we produce heating and cooling and electricity that is fed back to the apartments where the waste was sorted. The idea is for the people living in apartments to pay for the heating, cooling, and power depending on how good they are in sorting their waste. What is really critical is for us to also acknowledge that incineration is not necessarily bad. Incineration can actually be an accumulator of toxins inside the society. And when you accumulate the toxins, you reach a certain level where it starts commercially to make sense to recycle precious metals that in the wrong sense is a toxin, but in the right sense is a resource for our society. This kind of circular thinking is something that we can develop even more and drive the transition towards a sustainable world. I'm Stefan Håkansson, working for E.ON as the CEO of E.ON Business Solutions. We are driving this circularity in all our solutions. And I hope you will embark with me to find this lever for the transition that can take us much faster into the sustainable world. I look forward to this afternoon and the discussions and seeing how we can further embark on this journey. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be able to participate today. First of all, there is no longer any doubt whatsoever. Global warming is a reality, and we need to do something about it. The dialogue at COP this year did focus on how to reduce the use of fossil fuels, which is very good. But I believe we can do so much more and at the same time create sustainable growth. My recipe to achieve this is to allow and enable circular material flows to emerge in society. Having said this, I have the honor to be the CEO of a company with a 140-year-old legacy and tradition. Ragn-Sells is now a third-generation family-owned business that started with transporting goods and people with horses back in the 1880s. In the 1960s, we became a waste management company, and today we are also a recycling company in a linear economy. We will come back to that. Our vision, however, is that tomorrow we will become a detoxifier and raw material supplier in the future circular economy. Today, ladies and gentlemen, 90% of the biodiversity and water stress and as much as 50% of the total CO2 emissions originates from the fact that we extract virgin raw materials from the crust of the earth through mining activities. Therefore, it is so important to allow circular raw material flows to emerge. Ragn-Sells today is operating in geographies where we currently work in the same way as all other recyclers. But tomorrow, our ambition is that we will instead base our business on various circular industrial processes where we already today are world leaders, such as phosphorus recovery and nitrogen extraction. Today, in this circular table talk, we will highlight how one waste problem of today, namely fly ashes, will become a future resource by changing the view of today's waste-to-energy plants to instead becoming tomorrow's resource plants. We have already heard from the UNEP today about the methane pledge, where the importance of avoiding landfilling was stressed in order to allow resources to be sorted and thereby be part of a sustainable future. We have signed a first agreement with Hitachi Zosen Innova, where they now focus to use our ash-to-salt technology in 12 countries, several of them outside of Europe, to recover the huge amounts of salts that today are being wasted. GC Reborn, our salt partner, will later confirm the huge CO2 savings that we can be done by using recirculated salts and at the same time highlight some regulatory challenges. My message is that we from the business community will be able to contribute to reduce the world's CO2 emissions if we are given the same possibility to introduce circular processes and have the same, not better, conditions compared with today's miners. Let's make the world a better place to live in. Let's go circular. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
So now, after listening to these great gentlemen, we are going to enter the ash to salt world that is emerging, firstly from a global view, but also with my co-host Per Larssons from a policy view. Because if this is going to take off, it needs government support.
It is correct, Nick. All policies now tends to say that we should avoid creating waste, and this is correct if you are speaking about the linear economy. But now, when policymakers say, well, we would like to have a circular economy instead, we need to do a mind shift change, and we need to focusing on the resources instead. In Europe, this is a very big trend. But if you go to the potassium that we can extract out of the ash to salt process, there's a total ban to use it in agriculture, because the origin in this case is waste. So today's legislation say it is not the quality that sets the demand, if you can use it or not, it is the origin. And of course we need to change that. So in this case, waste is the origin.
Got you, yeah. So we'll obviously be touching on this a bit more as we go through the show, how we change this perspective of what is waste and what is actually a resource. Look, if we have a novel process for bringing back important materials from incinerated ash, then perhaps we need to thank the Scandinavian company Easy Mining. Jan Svärd is its CEO. And Jan, tell me about your new patent, why it's important for achieving these goals of harvesting materials from incinerated ash, and whether it has potential just in Sweden and the Nordics, or whether this could be a global solution.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, it's certainly novel, and as all patented solutions, it's unique. But it's also a solution to a very important problem, because all waste to energy ashes are hazardous material. They contain heavy metals, but also, more interestingly, a lot of chlorides. Some of them average maybe 20%, but some of them even up to 40% of salts. And if we just store them in a landfill, of course, all of this will be wasted. So our process starts with you wash the ash with water. I just want to mention it because for our solving this issue, it was an important one for the first site we're looking at. I'm sure Mikael will come back to that, but it's also, no heavy acids or so that is used. It's water basically. But the following steps are the really unique ones, where we split up the ash into different components. One, these 3 salts, and I'll come back to them, but also to an ammonia product and to a sand. And this sand, we hope it will be used as a construction material in the future, and a low carbon emitting construction material that is. Of course, this you need a lot of volume to test it out, so we hope to do that when the first plant is started. If you then come back to the salts, and I think Per has mentioned it already, the potassium salt, it's a really valuable salt. It's mined in underground mines, but it also comes out in this process as a crystal and really pure. So it fulfills all the quality requirements for fertilizers or for feed or for whatever application you want to use. And as I said, it's not only in fertilizer, but also in multiple industrial applications. The other salt that comes out is sodium salt, which is more commonly, it's table salt. It's what you have on your egg for breakfast or so. And it's that pure. It actually fulfills, again, all quality requirements for food or for feed, and even higher requirements, that is, for some of the industrial uses for chloralkali processes or for chlorate or for production of industrial applications. So very pure salt, and it's a large volume. The way this salt is produced today, it's either in a mine, again, underground mine, or it's pumped in vacuum from way below surface. And both these are very energy intensive processes, so a lot of carbon emitting from the energy production there. There is one alternative which is used in the southern hemisphere a lot, which is solar salts. But of course then you will ship a lot, so a lot of the carbon footprint from salt production is from shipping. And this of course will be equal if you're far away from the users. So I think this really has an opportunity to become big. I think it's a same issue globally. And then, of course, I was just going to mention also the final salt, calcium chloride salt, which is used for de-icing in the Nordics in liquid form, and then in multiple industrial applications in flaked form, and then it can be more easily shipped as well. So, of course, always a salt that has a concentration of 20% in the mine, in the easy mining part, if you want. In an urban mine, it's very high compared to what it's there naturally. And it will always be energy efficient to pick up. So, in summary, this is a globally useful technology. It takes care of a very important waste today, a hazardous waste. It produces a really pure product that is purer, basically, or as pure as the best products on the market. And it generates really a significant reduction in carbon footprint. So we say it's usually, we call it circularity for real, this is.
Got you. Just one supplementary question. So how long were you working as Easy Mining on this patent to be able to do this?
Well, this was one of the faster ones, to be honest, because it's a few years before we came to the patent, but we had an acute problem which we worked together with Mikael's organization. So I think when you have a clear target, that goes a bit faster. And so, because normally maybe 3-4 years before you have your patent from you start your research, in this case, about 2 years.
Right. Super. All right, Jan, thank you very much indeed. Now I've got the pleasure of introducing Giovanna Chiara, who is the Business Development Manager and Sales Manager, Energy from Waste at Hitachi Zosen Innova. Because there's two interesting stories here about a collaboration, in a sense, between two companies. I mean, Easy Mining has the patent maybe for the process, but you, Giovanna, your company, you've got the kind of the plant, the where it all happens sort of patent that is also key to this collaboration. So tell us a little bit more about what you've developed and also a little about which countries are looking to implement this ash to salt process.
Sure, Nick. Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. So as like Hitachi Zosen Innova, we are a leader in building waste to energy plants since years. We have long history and we have executed so far more than 1,000 projects in the waste management industry around Europe and also globally. So we can count on a really important installed basis of waste to energy plants, which mainly produce energy from waste, but that have also lots of side products like ashes, which is hazardous. And we are embracing now to move from a pure waste to energy company to a waste to X company, which means that closing their circle and from our plant also trying to extract a product that can be reused again. For us, circularity is a mission, but we strongly believe that this has to be supported by synergies between industries and technologies. That's why for us was really instrumental the licensing agreement that we signed with Easy Mining recently, because we could couple our technology and their technology in order to treat the ashes from this waste from this waste to energy plant in order then also to produce valuable products, as Jan just explained. The market is huge because, as I mentioned, we have a huge installed base, and also we are expanding globally because waste is a problem that is every country in the world, especially the developing country, are facing, and they need to build new plants waste to energy, and they will have the same issues with the residues that these plants are producing. Also in Europe, the market is huge because we are seeing an increase in pressure from regulators and policies about the landfilling or hazardous residues. So most of our past clients and new clients are coming to us asking for solution in order to reduce this hazardousness of the residues from their plants.
Got you. So from your perspective then, I mean, while it's sort of developed countries mainly that you're providing these plants to, I mean, we were just talking at the beginning, Giovanni, about the growth of waste that's going to happen into these rapidly developing countries in Asia and Latin America and Africa. Do you think, looking out over the next 10, 20, 30 years, that waste to energy, incineration of waste, with this process for getting materials out of the ashes, this could become much more commonplace in more parts of the world?
Definitely, because as I said, we are really we have a consolidated presence in Europe, but we are opening market in Australia, the sub-Saharan part of Africa, and also South America. There are plants projects that are still in development phase, but for sure they will be waste to energy plant that will present the same issues to which is the residue disposal at the end, because all these plants are a source of ashes that, if properly treated with our technology, that became an important resource.
Mm-hmm. Super. All right. So lots of potential there. Okay. So Giovanna, thank you very much indeed for being.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let me bring back my co-host, who is actually an expert here in his own right. Per, you touched a little bit on policy just earlier. I think you wanted to mention some very important and could be landmark developments in Sweden, Norway, and perhaps also the United Kingdom.
Yes, thank you, Nick. We have now heard the ambitions from both E.ON. He touches also on Innova, Ragn-Sells, but also Easy Mining with a global perspective. I think we now need to go to the ground. We need to be here and now and talk what's happening in the real life in Europe. And today's methods when it comes to deposit of ashes in landfills for hazardous waste has until now been the only method to get rid of the problem or to deal with the problem, so it doesn't cause harm for future generations. The innovation that Jan Svärd mentioned, his book will really have the potential to change the rules of the game, I believe. And he even spoke about a potential 100% recirculation capacity. Of course, the salts will be the first step, and then we'll be able to bring back also the sand, the silica, to construction material, hopefully. When it comes to what's happening today, then, well, the problem is that the fly ashes today are landfilled. It's landfilled, and I can give you one example. In Norway, we have an island in the Oslo Bay named Langøya, and here they put the fly ashes together with acids from the production of Kronos Titans metal production. And of course, it is needed in today's linear economy. But tomorrow, when we can recirculate both the assets, make them bring back again, because that we have technique for, but also and bring back the important raw material from the fly ashes, we will have a total new gameplay. So coming back now to your question, what is the policymakers doing? Well, until now, it has been no problem to use these methods. But in the United Kingdom, their Environmental Protection Agency has been very clear. They will no longer accept export of fly ashes to Langøya based on that treatment method would not be able to be used in the United Kingdom. Secondly, when it comes to the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, they have now really deeped into the process, and they come up with the conclusion that it's not material recycling to put the ashes in the landfill. It is deposit. They have not banned the export, but it's been very clear that this is not to recycle. It is definitely landfilling. And this is very important, because when policymakers are changing the way how they decide about where waste shall go and how it can be treated. That's a very important step for also enable circular processes, as we have talked about today. So I believe definitely that I will give a climate love both to the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency as well as the United Kingdom's Environmental Protection Agency, because they, with their decisions, enable circular processes that in the end will also reduce the carbon emissions. So thank you so much, Sweden, and thank you so much, United Kingdom.
Interesting. So what's happening is that some governments are now saying you basically can't ship this ash off to a landfill somewhere because, and that process you were talking about in Oslo, because they wouldn't allow that to happen in their own country. So in a sense, they're saying we're not exporting the fly ash anymore. So they will have to work out how to deal with the fly ash at home. And this opens the door to, the circular economy that we're talking about here, getting the potash back out of the system and other salts. So in fact, it's building the case for this new process very much. Super. All right. Now we're going to take a dive into issues surrounding this breakthrough, I think we can call it, from the kind of global to the local, in a sense. How do we ensure that toxicity issues are correctly handled? Or perhaps to put it another way, how do we ensure that what remains after these new processes have been added to the incineration, for example, the heavy metals could be one case, how can we make sure that what remains can be maybe carefully kept for harvesting at a later date into the circular economy? Because as we've all pointed out, we're not talking about landfill anymore, are we? We're talking about urban mining. We need to make sure that if we can't use certain things from the incineration process, we can use them maybe at a later date. But firstly, I'd like to invite Mikael Hedström, who's CEO of Ragn-Sells Treatment and Detox. Mikael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nick. So for us, this is, or let's say the headline for my time here is how to solve a waste problem while retrieving valuable resources. That's actually the headline of this whole discussion, I think. Per mentioned the disposal of the fly ash, that we have been doing this for many years in a specially designed landfill. And as you know, perhaps a fly ash is an end product from cleaning of flue gases. It contains things such as heavy metals and also chlorides. It's a really important part of that process because this is where, for instance, mercury end up, and a modern energy from waste plant will stop 99.9% of the mercury that comes in to the plant from coming out. The problem with fly ash in terms of landfilling, and then it's only landfilling, not the resource issue, it's the high content of chlorides. Normally it's around 20%, and that is much higher than the regulations allow, even in hazardous waste landfills. This has been solved by treatment with other ashes to prevent leaching and making the material stackable. Especially coal ashes has had a good use here with that. And for us, this is no longer possible since there are almost no coal ash in Sweden anymore, which of course is a good thing. When looking at other solutions for us, we had also the added issue that we had a freshwater recipient, which ruled out the normal washing processes that exists as well. However, the possibilities in this is that the salts are needed resources in society. They are used in several different processes, as Jan said before. Today they are extracted as virgin resources with certain CO2 emissions to that. These insights has led to our ash to salt concept and our investment projects. So what we are doing is that we are building a plant to treat around 130,000 tons of ashes, which is almost 50% of the Swedish fly ash today. The it's done in a series of steps. First step is to wash the ashes with leach water, which is basically rainwater that will fall on the area, and then rinsing in a few steps with cleaner and cleaner water. In the end, it will be from the condensate from the evaporators. This means that the plant will serve the use also as a water treatment plant for our big landfill at Högbytorp. So we will clean the ashes to the level that it could be landfilled on a non-hazardous waste landfill, but we don't expect this to be the long-term solution. As Jan and Per said before, the ash has qualities that would fit into the cement and the concrete industry. So after the rinsing and that step, the salt brine that comes out of the rinsing is concentrated in an evaporator to separate out sodium and potassium. After that, it's cooled to separate sodium from potassium. These steps are the innovation and the patent that Easy Mining holds. It's fairly simple to understand, but it's not that easy to invent. What is also interesting is that the plant that we are building now is from standard processes. So evaporation is kind of a standard process, crystallization is a standard process, cooling is a standard process, but you have to put them in the right order to be able to build this kind of plant. This of course made it easier for us to find a partner like Hitachi Zosen Innova to build the plant, and also for us at Ragn-Sells to make the investment decision, because this is a big investment for us. What is also interesting is that LCA compared to the traditional salt production, or ash treatment for that matter, if you think that you will create products that would otherwise be needed to be virgin extraction. So the products, as you might remember, is the ammonium sulfate coming from the emission control system in the power plants. We will hopefully, and I believe that this will be the end of this, that we will use as emission control again in the E.ON plant that is basically next door to us. Calcium chloride that will be used for dust control, sodium chloride for industrial processes and de-icing, and then potassium chlorides, fertilizers. They are necessary. Potassium is necessary for us in the same way as phosphor. And as Per said before, the quality of this salt will be good enough for that use. However, the origin is waste, and therefore we have a problem. But I cannot believe that the lawmakers in our countries will stick to that conclusion that origin is more important than quality. It has to be the other way around. And then maybe we are looking for something more out of this process, but that will come in a later stage. As you can see in our pictures, the project is ongoing. The start of the commercial production will be after the summer into 2022. It's really exciting time for us, and we are really very, very excited about this.
Mikael, just one quick question then for the viewers, really. So if you can harvest all these materials, the potash, but also the sodium chloride, the other salts, and the ammonia, and blah, 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 all these things together, what will be left? What's left that can't be dealt with at this moment in time?
At this moment in time, I think when we in a few years, as Jan said, have solved the washed ash, the sand from that, there will be a small fraction of soluble heavy metals that we will have to take care of in our hazardous waste landfill until we have a need for it, or if we have a good solution that is in an industrial sensible way of doing it. But that will be, of course, landfilled in the normal way, that we will pay the landfill tax and so on.
Yeah. So then hopefully one day in the future that will be a resource that can come back from the dead, or like the fabled phoenix rising from the ashes would come back again too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, super. Mikhail, just stay with us because we want you to stay for our panel that's coming up. Okay, now I would like to invite Friedrich Eider, who's the country manager and research and development manager at GC Reba Salt. I want to ask Friedrich basically to talk a bit about what is the market for these salts that we're talking about here in terms of bringing them back and harvesting them from incinerated ashes. So over to you, Friedrich.
Thank you, Nick, very much. If you look at the total Swedish market of import of salts, it's about 1 million ton. If you look on a European level, it's several million tons, and that affects the climate, of course. Salt is imported to the Nordics because we don't have a natural salt deposit. And actually, salt is a mineral, and it is 250 million years old. And we mine it at a depth of around 600 to 800 meters. And there are different methods of mining, but all methods will end up in a depletion of our earth. So actually there are several ways of looking at the environmental impact. It's the depletion, but also the carbon dioxide emissions of transporting to the Nordics. And if you look at the picture here, we have the traditional linear approach where we mine and use the salts, but how can you recycle the salt? You can recycle it because it's one of the raw materials that is included in the production of plastics, PVC, but also paper, fabrics, and so on. So we should reuse and recycle all the products. But in the end, it will end up as a waste. And as we have spoken today, we incinerate the waste, we get the fly ash. The new thing is that we can clean the fly ash and create pure salt crystals. And these salt crystals are of the same quality as the conventional produced products today. So actually, we have for the first time a locally Swedish produced salt, a circular salt.
Interesting. I mean, my father was a great kitchen garden chap. He spent his whole weekends in the garden putting horse manure into potato beds. And he was always saying, I need to pop out and get some potash, And I think he probably had no idea. And I think probably most people, ordinary consumers, have no idea where this potash is coming from, whether it's coming from Belarus or whether it's coming from Western Canada or other places, and have no idea what the environmental footprint is. So this is why it's quite exciting. I mean, I think if you could speak to ordinary people about this, they would be amazed where potash comes from, and they'd be amazed that you could actually now get it out of incinerated ashes. Frederick.
Absolutely. We have made a LCA, it's a life cycle assessment comparing bringing the salts home to the Nordic countries compared to producing it locally. And the figures speaks for itself. We can reduce the carbon dioxide emissions with 90%.
Was that 90 or 19?
90%.
That's unbelievable. So, in fact, it really has a huge carbon footprint in terms of the extraction and the transportation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's not only that. We also have the depletion of our Earth and also the energy usage.
Yeah. Super. Okay, stay with us, please. I'm just going to introduce now, we're going to have a panel discussion, and I'm going to introduce three more guests and give each one of them 3 minutes just to introduce themselves, in a sense, what they're doing and what their perspective is. So I'm going to go one by one first. So we got Vidar Svenning Olsen, who's the CEO of Ragn-Sells Norway. Over to you, Vidar.
Thank you very much. In addition to being the CEO, I also have the honor to lead the work on how to create new circular loops for the whole Ragn-Sells group. And if we shall succeed, we need to collaborate. This is what we have heard here today with the Norwegian salt company. This will be the proof that there is a market for resources that until now has just been a problematic waste. In Norway, fly ash is treated by mixing it with the waste acid, as Per mentioned, and landfilling it on an old limestone quarry. Even though it's considered an acceptable way of neutralizing two types of hazardous waste, it is no sustainable solution. When the fly ash now can be treated in a recycling process, we need to solve the problem with the acid to make both materials circular. We believe that we have the possibility to do so, to use the acid in the process of extracting other critical elements. In my short introduction, I will focus on the possibility Ragn-Sells has to support the Norwegian society with creating circular solutions in other material flow. I would like to mention that we have a huge focus on how to reduce the risk of eutrophication in the fjords in Norway. The Norwegian fish industry has a problem with emissions of sludge from their production at sea. In Ragn-Sells, we have developed a solution to collect the sludge and thereby utilize both the energy potential and the nutrients from the sludge. Today it is an environmental problem that we are solving to get the fish sludge out of the water, but tomorrow my ambition is that we will be able to extract the phosphorus on an element level together with our innovation company Easy Mining Support. The topic for today is very important, and I believe that we must always strive to create circular loops, especially with resources we know we can't live without.
Okay, Vidar, thank you very much indeed. Next up, we've got Marta Haugland. Haugland? Is it Haugland? I think I'm so bad on that one. Marta, you maybe help me out with that. Senior Innovation Advisor and Head of Program at Nordic Innovation.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Haugland is fine. I represent Nordic Innovation, and we are part of the Nordic Council of Ministers, which is the intergovernmental cooperation between the 5 Nordic countries. And the Nordic cooperation is 50 years this year, and it has quite high ambitions for the climate and the environment. Of course, the Nordic cooperation has this vision that we should be the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030, which is quite a big ambition, and we need to be ambitious. Should we manage this? As you pointed out earlier as well. And in this vision, we have this a green Nordic region where circular economy and bio-based industries come in, as well as a competitive Nordic region, which is of course super important that our companies are competitive in the world. And then we have a socially sustainable Nordic region, which is also very important. And I work on circular economy. I've been working on circular economy for the last 4 years, and we've been trying to challenge industries for these circular processes and circular solutions. And I'm so happy to hear these very interesting circular solutions that you found to such a large problem. And it's of course interesting to hear also that, there is a regulation problem here. That I think the Nordic countries should really aim to solve as soon as possible. Nordic Innovation is the innovation organization under the Nordic Council of Ministers, but our bosses are kind of also the Nordic Ministers for Trade and Industry, which are of course very interested in this cross-border problems, or this definition problems that this is kind of thing. So I also agree with one of the former saying that this cooperation is key. And of course at Nordic Innovation we support innovation projects related to circular economy and many other topics. And what we do, why this Nordic cooperation is so important, is that we can make such a larger impact by collaborating in the Nordics or together than being alone, which is of course a really important part. And we always look for this Nordic added value when we look for projects. Just now, from the 2021 to 2024, we are working on this vision, which also has a vision of no waste in the Nordics. So this is of course a very good way of finding how you can reduce waste as you are solving a problem and getting new resources out of it. So I think just some weeks ago somebody mentioned to me that the material has to be the hero from now on. And I think this is a good example where the material is the hero. And if we can really manage this process, that sounds really nice.
I presume that some of the Nordic countries also probably signed up to the methane pledge as well at COP26. But maybe we come back to this when we have the panel discussion. Let me ask Annette Bluchia, the Director of Energy Infrastructure Solutions Nordic at E.ON, to come in here. And tell us a little bit about the symbiosis between, these various companies in this one place in Sweden, because it's a bit fascinating. It's a bit like industrial ecology, one of those funky topics that we all heard about when we were younger. But, yeah.
Happy to do so. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, the cities in Europe is growing, right? And with that, also the energy consumption, but also the amount of waste. And I wish that my kids for the future, that there will be no waste at all, but that is not the case today, right? So we need to make sure that we use the energy and the material in the waste as much as possible and reuse as many times as we can. And E.ON, as being one of the biggest energy providers and players in Europe, is of course taking our part of this. But we cannot do it alone, right? So coming back to one of the most healthier partnerships that I have ever experienced in my career is really with Ragn-Sells in Stockholm. So as you said, we have a really good holistic cooperation there where we get the waste from Ragn-Sells put into our waste incineration plant. And the fly ashes is actually transported electronically to Ragn-Sells just close by. And as you heard, as starting next year, they will actually do then salt of that. And I will hopefully then get ammonia back, which can efficiency my process even further. So I think this is a perfect example of a really good innovation, but also a holistic view of a partnership where we reuse energy.
Super. All right. So let's just throw it open a little bit here then. So I think one of the things that's coming out of this is that Ragn-Sells and also Hitachi, in a sense, seem to be taking a little bit of leap of faith here, right? Because at the moment, the regulations don't seem to be, exactly on your side, but they seem to be moving, if I can understand this properly. I mean, you've decided to do this circular economy process with the ashes. What needs to happen in the next 12 months? Is there something critical that needs to shift with policy so that when the plant and the whole system is built, you can do exactly what you want to do? Or is there a sense that you're getting a signal from the government, look, it's going to be okay? I just want to clear that up for everybody, because I think you're being very courageous, right, in doing this, if the policy is not completely there to favor what you're doing. So who can deal with that question?
I can take it if you want for a small portion, because yes, definitely policy is on our side because things are changing in Europe. The constraints are becoming more severe. So we are seeing lots of customers that comes to us and ask, how can we do with our ashes? So one of solution that we propose them is the washing and then the extraction of salt. So definitely it's helping, but it's coming as well. So The Salarium project in Sweden is instrumental because it's the first reference plant there. So after that, we will have something tangible to showcase.
So are we saying in a sense that this plant that you're constructing, working with Ragn-Sells, easy mining, blah, 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 that this will be, in a sense, a showcase for policy makers around the Nordic region and beyond to see that you can pull this off, it works, it's safe, and it's got all these multiple climate change benefits and so on?
I can mention just that already now, I have been giving speeches in at least 6 countries, even if we have not even opened the plant, about what is happening. And the interest is growing. And we know that also from Hitachi Zosen Innova, that there is a huge interest. And policymakers now in Sweden and in the UK says the same thing as what happened in Europe. You're not allowed to deal it with the same way as you did it before. You need to change. We need to recirculate. Even if I believe that Michael can come back and say we can use the salts today, but there's a better use if we can use it for as a fertilizer when it comes to the potassium. But of course, it can be used today already.
Yeah, I think it's important that for the long run that lawmakers change the rules so that resources can be used to their best value in a sense. I think that the quality of the salts that we are producing should make the way for the best applications. The origin should not be important. I think that is something that needs to change, and also to look, as Naturvårdsverket has done, to look at what is really recycling. Do we think that it's recycling or not when you do something that otherwise wouldn't have been done?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I think the key point that was made was that recycling in some people's heads is kind of like just another process, but it has an end. Whereas actually what we're talking about here is trying to create almost an endless loop, right? Where things just keep moving around as they do in nature and they don't fall out of the system and get dumped. Can I just come back? I see Ty there from the UNEP Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Is this issue of methane relevant in this story? We're talking waste to energy that leads to ashes that then we can bring back the materials. But would we be able to boost the amount of energy that we're harvesting if we were actually, doing the full methane, all the leakages of the methane, which would help tie in the world with climate change and also produce more energy? Is this relevant to the Nordic region, or is all the methane being captured anyway already?
I think it's very relevant to the Nordic region and to Europe as well. There is still a lot of methane emissions, particularly in this region, from waste. And if there's ways to prevent that methane from entering the atmosphere, that's a good thing. So I would see that as, as part of the circular economy. It's just one of those additional benefits that has a huge impact on climate change and being able to prevent, continued global warming. So I think that, it has a role to play in the sense that these technologies are preventing methane from reaching the atmosphere.
Yeah. So it's a kind of side benefit as well, yeah. What's, Annette, please, for the viewers, explain to me why ammonia is important in energy production, because this is another material that's hopefully going to come from this circular economy process with your partners. Why is ammonia useful?
Absolutely, but I just want to really underline what you said here, Ty, that methane is really much worse than actually burning waste, right? That is the basis. We need to reduce the landfill all over in Europe and in the Nordics and also in the world to start off with, right? So this is really important to understand. Ammonia is one of the things that we actually need in our process, but I think what I also would like to mention here is that we also take responsibility for not only the fly ash, which we have a partnership with Ragn-Sells, but also to really in the future capture the CO2, right? So that we have the whole process here where we are very curiously looking into techniques like carbon capture storage and potentially biochar as well, so that we could actually reuse also the carbon dioxide one more time into, for example, steel industry. So I just want to say that I think we all have a responsibility to really try to be innovative, to be brave, and to put also money into it, as Ragn-Sells is doing, because then we will get somewhere with the whole circular economy.
So for those that don't know biochar, we know biochar can be, it's like concentrated carbon, isn't it? We know it can be used in agriculture to bring carbon back into the soil, but you're saying here you can also use it as a substitute for coke, in the green steel production. Yeah.
So it's really to heat up the atoms as much as possible to get them solid. And we believe that we can actually make sure that they can be used in the steel industry, so that they have green coal, so that we will get a new circular flow. And hopefully then we can actually be carbon dioxide negative in the future from our energy perspective.
When somebody throws away their old bed and it goes into the waste process and then the incineration process, it can not only produce potassium for agriculture and lots of other things like table salt, but it can also produce biochar to help the greening of the steel industry. So in fact, people need to know that their old bed may have a life well beyond it being put in the waste stream.
Exactly. So I'm really curious to see, what is the end of recycling, right? I don't think we've seen the end of that yet.
Mm-hmm. So Marta, just looking at Nordic cooperation there, this is something that's going on in Sweden. We've touched on Oslo because there's an issue there with the landfill thing. Does anybody know, maybe Marta knows, others knows, what does Finland think? What does Denmark think? I mean, is this now going to be a wave across the Nordic region that will then wash across the world? When we were at COP26, I was doing some moderation for Business Sweden, and they had the export credit agencies from Sweden and things like that lined up, because Sweden and the Nordics generally seem to be a crucible of innovation that could be exported to many countries around the world, which, heaven forbid, you make money out of, but the rest of the world solves a problem, right? So is this going to go, this innovation, beyond Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland? Where do we see it going?
Well, I think this is a very good example of how you can get a Nordic innovation out in the world, solving global challenges, as you say, and it's the companies that have to answer if they have that ambition. But I think that this is also an example where industry is moving faster than regulatory and policy actors, and that is the case with circular economy a lot, I think, because regulators don't really perhaps understand all, and they are not innovators as you are. So that's really a case. But I think this has the potential to go really far and to help solve and link up to the SDGs and help solve climate and other issues.
Others want to comment on this? Where's this going to go? Is this just going to stay in Sweden and a bit in Norway, or is it going to go far?
I have to say that when we have announced our project, I got calls from like 10, 15 countries at least where this solution was sort of needed, and it all ended up, I guess, in the cooperation between Easy Mining and Hitachi Zosen Innova, I think, which is a really interesting thing. And I saw that Jan opened his mouth, so perhaps you would like to.
Jan, you need to unmute.
Just to fill in, Mikael, I think you're absolutely right. I think, Nick, you mentioned it takes a leap of faith, and that is what Mikael is, and the big investments that Ragn-Sells is doing now, because it's not just a leap of faith in the technology, which is of course very important, but it's a leap of faith in the whole business model, and it requires these ambitions, as Marte, I think, correctly said, that now actually business is ahead of policymakers in promoting circular economy, and it should be almost the other way around. So I think if we get this reference case here in the Nordics, this can be something that truly can travel globally.
Yes, I would like to confirm the same thing, that there are many parallel industries who has the same problem today, where they are not allowed to let out their wastes in the same way as before. There are new regulations coming up. So many industries has the same need today, and Ragn-Sells is actually a forerunner in this and has created a new wonderful process taking care of the waste in a wonderful way.
And since you asked before the question, what should the lawmakers do and what do they need to do? I think that they just need to think in a circular way, to take away the linear perspective and thus taking away the obstacles from using the material and the resources again and again.
No, I mean, I think one of the reasons why Ragn-Sells and We Don't Have Time are doing these circular table talks is because although the concept of a circular economy has been around for donkey's years, right? I mean, we've been talking about this for decades. It does seem as if there is a window opening right now that's going beyond just, even the linear targets of the Paris, the targets of the Paris Agreement, not linear, they're exponential, but beyond, these treaties, because it's starting to link up all the big multilateral agreements, whether it be on mercury, on persistent organic pollutants, metals, waste shipments under the Basel Convention. I mean, there's so many of those things that seem to be coming together now through the lens of the circular economy, like we never had it before. And I don't know how you feel about the European Union and what it's done post-COVID and the recovery packages. Some people feel it really didn't go as far as it could do, but there does seem to be an appetite for shifting the thinking now into a much more circular way. And that's why I think this process is interesting to illuminate on this show. Mm-hmm. Are you all optimistic? I suppose that's the question. Anybody not optimistic?
Yeah, I believe that policymakers are not stupid. I think that of course they will understand this, and it will take some time, perhaps more time than what we think is necessary, but I think that we will get there. It's the logical and sensible thing to do. I mean, you say that it has been around for 10, 30 years. I mean, before the industrialization, it was all about the circular economy.
Yes, nature is the circular economy.
Yeah, so from that perspective, I think it's the logic thing.
Let me ask one last question, right? Because I always find in my experience of life that whenever there's something absolutely brilliant that could really improve society and the environment and maybe generate new green jobs and all this, there's always some other people somewhere else who don't want it to happen because they lose their business model. And then they fight like devils to stop it. Is there anybody out there fighting like devils to stop this kind of thing? Because they'll lose their business?
Well, I can take that. Yeah, there will be a great change in the business. The traditional producers will, of course, try to defend their position on the market. There is also a second thing that we need to follow up, and that is the ISO norms that are actually a product specification of the products. And that should also be adjusted to a new market, which is the waste to product market. So, yeah, there will be a fight on the market.
I mean, at COP26, we had this wonderful situation where many governments were talking about the phasing out of the internal combustion engine, but there are a few countries that didn't go that way, including Germany, because they have a strong lobby with the petrol-powered cars. And I think were they in alliance with Saudi Arabia, which seemed very weird to see Germany blocking something with Saudi Arabia. But, you sometimes get strange alliances of people that don't want things to move. But I think you're right, Frederick. I mean, the old economy is going to kick and fight these changes. But in a sense, if there's enough strength, particularly, say, in the Nordic region, to bring these innovations forward, then it's just a question of they may slow things down, but they can't change the direction of travel. Yep. Okay, well, unless anybody has anything absolutely burningly critical they want to raise, I'm going to go back to my co-host, Per Larssons. What do you make of our conversation today, Per?
Yes, thank you, Nick. I think it has been a fantastic show, or circular table talk. We talked about the scarce resource potassium, but we also touched about phosphorus. And you mentioned that about the second circular table talk, where we extracted phosphorus from sewage sludge. Both Larsson and Dan again highlighted the importance of extracting phosphorus, but also Vidar, and he mentioned in his part about a new way of getting phosphorus, and that is from the leftover from the fish industry, to avoid that the fjords in Oslo or other places in Norway will suffer from eutrophication. But at the same time, use the technique designed by Easy Mining, so we can bring back it on element level. T. Shang from UN Environment highlighted the importance of supporting the methane pledge, and we see that the ash to salt innovation will probably do that. And here we also had, and that was very interesting to hear, the interest from Hitachi Zosen to not just use this in the 12 countries that we now have an agreement with, but also to use this in Sub-Sahara, where they already have now talks going on. In Latin America, the same thing. So this is not just only for developed countries, this is for all countries around the world. I was supposed to be in Geneva last week, presenting at the Minister Conference at the WTO, where they were supposed to discuss circular material flows and principles for trade deals. I truly believe one thing, and if we can enable that quality are the determining factor if we can use a substance or not, instead of today's origin, much will happen. Then developed countries will be able also to use the technique and produce high quality products that they then can use either in their country or even export. But what rings in my ear in the end is of course Fredrik from Gese Reiber, the Norwegian company, saying that the carbon saving in the salts that they are using or buying from ash to salt production will reduce the carbon emissions with 90%. And that's a huge saving. So anyhow, looking forward to the next circular table talks. This has been a very fruitful one, and more are to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Per. And I want to thank everybody that came on the show. And I think, having Ty also on from the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and the methane thing just shows that when you actually start touching an issue, you can actually start finding threads that link you to something else. And if you have the creative thinking and the creative ambition, in a sense, you can start bringing in other challenges at the same time and creating other solutions and other opportunities. And I think that is also part of the circular economy. It's about that broad thinking and weaving the threads through our economy. Thank you very much indeed for all being here. I look forward to maybe you could look forward to tuning into our next Circular Table Talks, which will be in the new year sometime. And we look very much forward to what we're going to discuss there, because I think these stories are not that well known, actually, to many people. And when you hear stories that we could reduce carbon emissions by 90% linked with some of these substances we use, we've got a lot to offer in these stories. Thank you very much indeed, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.